The hottest trends, the coolest tips, and everything to keep you in the know. This is HMA Network TV.
I'm here with Michael White, the hair department head of Milk and All Good Things. Welcome, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
You started your career with Vidal Sassoon and Sebastian. How did you segue into film and television?
Well, when I started my career, I was first with Vidal Sassoon, and that's where I began my foundation of learning how to cut hair and becoming good as a hairdresser. And when I left Sassoon to go work with Sebastian, that took me into more of a styling type of education where Sassoon was more cutting. So when I was with Sebastian, I was able to kind of segue more into doing print and commercials because we were so out there involved in educating with product that when people were doing shoots or something, they would call Sebastian and say, "Can we use one of your hairdressers?" So when I made it available, I was very, ambitious to make the money and to be part of it. And music videos were becoming really big, MTV. So I started to do music videos. And then from music videos, I started to do press. And as I started to grow into that field and made a name for myself, my clientele, who I had a few actresses and actors, started realizing I was doing that entity. Were kind of like asking me to, would you come and, work on my movie, or can you come and do my TV show? Well, I was not union yet, so I had to, find other avenues to get in. So I was very fortunate in the 80s. They started to do non-union films, and they would make them, companies would do one every 6 weeks. And I hooked up with a company that used to invite me and say, would you take care of our actresses or our actor? And they, through my clients, they would open these doors for me. And then one day a client who was working on a film in Texas called me up and said she needed a perm, her hair permed and hair color, and she couldn't get to LA. Flew out there, and I said, wow, this is really cool. And I got the fever. So from that happening, I started knocking on doors and pursuing people that were looking for people like myself. And because of all that foundation I had from the salons, this was when the transition in hair looks were more blow dried. So when an actress would come on and say, I don't want my hair set, I want it blow dried, I would get the job. And one thing led to another, and the next thing I knew, as I got into, after a few films, I started really breaking in, and then I, got my days, and the next thing you know, I was on my first union picture, and I was shot out of a cannon, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, it's it happened, it was a lot of work. It took me, if I put time to it, it took me 8 years.
It's a very personal job. You kind of set the tone for, the actor, actress in the morning. Hair and makeup is pretty much the first people that they see. So.
First people that they see. When you, to have a successful career in what we do, a producer is interested in one thing, that his talent is going to look good. The director is interested in one thing, that his talent will appear to be the way he wants them to look in the story that he's telling, and that when they leave the trailer, they're happy. So when they come in the morning, you are a therapist, you are a psychologist,
Yeah.
You have to be able to know exactly what's coming at you. It's not about myself, unless they're interested. It's about what they need to have done. And you have to know how to really treat an individual and to be able to do what you need to do quickly, get it done, make sure that they had a good experience at doing it. It might be about having something for them to read, having something for them to eat, having something to keep them busy so you can do your job. And when you're done with them, that when they walk out of there and they go to wardrobe and they get dressed and they walk on that set, they're happy to be at work. Because sometimes when there are people that have not been successful because they don't know how to, politically be correct with talent.
You've also been recognized quite a bit for your wig work and period hair. Where did you learn those particular skills?
I did a movie named Total Recall, which took place in the future. So my first experience with period was doing a futuristic movie. Even though they were kind of looking as they were in today's times, we did kind of, a very modern type of uncontrived glamour. We had a futuristic group on the planet Mars. So we had to come up with these period stylings of the future. So by taking a little part of the past, we twisted it around and took things that were forward and made them backwards, and it really worked. But then I went from there to do a few other films. And then I got my big break, which was Interview with the Vampire. And which was the story with Lestat and Louis from the series of books, and it took place from the 17th century up to present day. And I was very fortunate that the wig maker, who was the best in the country and in the world at that time, Renata, I had to spend 3 months with her before we started the movie, putting together the pieces and the wigs that were going to be worn by the actors. So that was my first education and my first really knowledge of what a wig was about. And then I worked with a woman who, Academy Award-winning hairstylist, who was so talented. And I had the need to learn. I always have had that ability to tell somebody to teach me. I always feel that, we never know enough. And I basically watched everything that was being done. And I watched movies to learn what they were thinking and how they, things looked in the past. I went to museums to look at art. And basically, when you're doing a period piece, you're copying something that's already been done. So if you learn through the techniques of what you've been taught, you can process that onto a wig. But I was able to learn how to do lace wigs beautifully in style and technique by being taught by other people.
So you do lace wigs?
That was my forte. That is still.
You make them hand?
Don't make them. I ventilate. Okay. I did ventilate as my eyes got a little worse. It's tough to do.
That takes,
takes a lot of patience. But we had to do that years ago. You had to be able to ventilate a knot. And I realized that, there are things you have to admit that you don't do well. And those were one of those things. I was never one to sit around crocheting or sewing or doing anything. So I used to find the best people that did it. And when I got movies that I needed wigs for, or when I had to do a period piece, I had the best wig makers working with me. And people always say, well, how do you figure out what styles to do? And, for Interview with the Vampire as an example, I went to museums to study art. You look at old paintings to see what hairstyles the artist painted. And with your capabilities and your techniques, you just transfer that onto a head. But the thing about wigs is the trick is to make it look as if it's coming from their scalp. That's what gives you the star. Wow. I say. But I was very fortunate. I was surrounded by the people that were the original, the best at it. So right now in my career, I'm teaching other people to do that. I pass it on practically every day when I'm working. Young people, will approach me and say, "Can you show me?"
Now, also, how did you come up with the trend-setting looks that you create for films?
Well, one of the ones that I was most known for was Brad Pitt in Seven. And we came, my haircutting techniques were, my haircutting abilities are so well engraved into me from my teachings at Sassoon. I was taught to be a great hair cutter. And when I went into film and television, I brought that with me. A lot of people will send their people out to be cut. And I would say, no, this is my background, I can cut your hair. So on movies that I was doing, I would cut people and I would practice by cutting people on set, because if you only do a haircut once in a while, your techniques become a little dull.